auto sequence start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, on with the show.
My name is Rob Miller. I'm the author of Satan's Trap. My happiness is my faith in Jesus, the Blessed Mother, all the angels and saints, especially Padre Pio and all is Saint Michael, as well as my family.
Okay, Rob Miller, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Would you mind to open us up in prayer before we get started?
Sure. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord Jesus, Father Almighty, the Blessed Mother, and all the angels and saints, especially Saint Michael, Saint Padre Pio, Saint Therese the Little Flower, please watch over us and protect us, protect our families, protect our businesses, protect our finances, protect our health, protect our pets, family members, personal property. And please make sure to give us graces and blessings. Amen. Praise be Jesus. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, so glad to see you. I'm so thankful that you're here. You've written a fascinating book. It's called Satan's Trap. And basically, you're an occult survivor. You spent 27 years deep in the occult, right?
Oh, yeah. It was. I say I wasted 27 years deeply involved in the occult. Yeah. And towards the end, it turned my whole life upside down. It almost destroyed me, my family. And I converted to Catholicism. There was a priest by the name of Father Peter Mary Rookie, who was a charismatic healing priest. And he helped me get out. He told me to start praying the St. Michael Chaplet, which I did. He also told me to, once that started helping, pray the rosary. And I was able to get out just based on those two prayers. Later, I added the Divine Mercy Chaplet also to my prayers, as well as a lot of other prayers. But just those three things are very, very powerful. The rosary and the St. Michael Chaplet, especially for driving out evil.
And you mentioned in the book that you didn't really grow up in a religious home. Do you think that had a lot to do with you becoming involved in the occult?
I think it had like 70 to 80% of me getting involved in that stuff was the cause of it. You know, we never went to church. When I asked my parents what religion we were, because other kids were going to church, they said we're Presbyterian. Then I'd ask, well, why don't we go to church? And they say, well, we believe we can pray at home, you know. And my father was more religious than my mother, but my mother would patronize psychics and mediums. And then I developed an interest in ghosts and this paranormal. Of course, that went into tarot cards because whenever she'd go see a lot of these psychics, she dragged me right along with her. That led into spiritualism and mediumship. I was a medium also. I did all the big psychic fairs and conventions. I did public seances. And I was very well known. I was extremely young because I started all this about the age of 11 or 12. I think I was early 12 years old. And by the time everything fell apart and I got out and converted to Catholicism, I was 39. So I basically spent 27 years wrapped up in this stuff. I my wife was also, I met my wife at a psychic fair a long time ago. And she was one of my patrons or customers coming to get readings, and she'd come to all the seances and things I performed. And so we owned and operated 2 occult bookstores. Later, in life, she gave it up and converted to Catholicism, but I just kept going.
What was that like living together when you were still dabbling in that and she was now a Catholic?
Well, you know, she was always a Catholic, and she'd always, along with her psychics and crystals and stones and all this other stuff she was also interested in, she would use a lot of Catholic prayer. Of course, that doesn't really mix well But she always held on to her Catholic faith, which was a good thing because that was one of the driving forces that helped me along. At times, I'd be asked to quit it or tone it down, or, and towards the end, it was kind of difficult because I was operating my second occult and New Age bookstore. We'd already had one, and I sold it to a declining neighborhood a long time ago, like in the mid to late 90s. And then the second one, she didn't really want a part of it, but it was our business. So we had a financial investment there, and she wouldn't participate or anything, but yet I'd go in and I'd run the business. And, everybody always asks me, does any of this stuff work? Yes, it does. As far as the magical rituals and that, but you never find a happy person. All these people and customers would come into my store and they all have problems and they want to solve their problems with candle rituals, other occult rituals. And they've always got tons of problems. And then it seems like when they do those rituals and they get back on the road or they think they're getting help. Of course, the power they're using is from the devil. So, of course, it's tainted. Then everything falls apart again, but it's worse than it was the first time. That's how the devil keeps baiting you. Then they will go back and do another ritual, and they would it's a continuous process of doing these rituals and things. Well, that's how he baits you and drags you along. And then when he gets sick of you, of course, Satan and the demonic's main purpose, because, they were driven out of heaven because of pride. They're prideful and they hate the human race. One of the reasons they were thrown down was St. Michael and the battle in heaven took place was God wanted them to serve us as well as him. And they refused to do that because they were full of pride and jealousy. So they hate the human race. Their goal is to destroy us. And the occult is nothing but a trap. That's why I call my book Satan's Trap. He baits you along. You will get certain things, but it's always tainted and your life will fall apart totally eventually. It may take years. For some people, it may take weeks. For some people, it may take months. Everyone's different. For me, it took years. And I was never baptized either since I was never in a church. So that didn't exactly help the situation either.
All right. Well, let's go back for a minute about when you first fell in. You said you were 11 at the time?
I was probably early 12, late 11, early 12. I don't remember my exact age. I started reading a lot of books about ghosts and the paranormal in the library. And, and shortly thereafter, my mother had always patronized psychics all of her life, psychics and astrologers and mediums. And, so her practices, she noticed me involved in seeing ghosts and everything. And then she would kind of, I don't want to say push me along, but I would say she kind of allowed me to get involved in this stuff because one of the first things I did was I moved from the paranormal and books to tarot cards. And by the time I was 13 or 14, I was proficient at reading the things. There's a trick just to show you the evil power that's involved, especially with tarot cards. I was told by someone I was taking lessons with, which was a psychic at that time, that I had a natural gift, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I would never. She told me never use the book. She'd say take the cards, shuffle them, touch them a lot, and then just go let the person who you're reading shuffle them, and then after they do, have them cut them 3 times towards themselves and put them all back together. And lay them out in a series of 10. It doesn't matter which order you use them. Look at the pictures and tell a story according to what they mean to you, according, 1 through 10. Then when you're done with that 10, lay another 10 out, and I was able to do that. Later, I found out that the psychic gift I had was actually a Christian charismatic gift where I would receive words of knowledge. And I could also, to an extent, maybe help people along or whatever. But Satan got a hold of that and bastardized it, so it was being used to give people psychic readings. And I was even so good at doing psychic readings, I was able just to pull people's relatives and names out of thin air without knowing them. I tell them their car colors. I tell them what they did for a living. And these things were like, it was like a sign or words would appear to me in my head, like a little dream or a tiny vision. Sometimes I'd hear something and I'd interpret it or a name, and it would be correct. And that was Satan dragging me along using these Christian charismatic gifts that I had and perverting him for his own use. And when I was hearing and seeing these things, these were him and his demons giving me this information, because the information I was giving was through the occult, and it has it was solely for someone's benefit or enjoyment. It wasn't anything connected with the Lord or religion or anything. It was a form of entertainment for some people. For some people, it was a form of magical ritual, so they'd know if the rituals were working. Other people, they would, I had businessmen that wouldn't make a move without me. They'd call me and they'd say, well, I'm getting ready to do this. What do you think? Do you see anything? Is this going to be good or bad for me? What do you see? And what I saw was absolutely correct. And Satan had such a tight hold on me, I was able to do that. And these demons or these things during my psychic readings were being able to plant this stuff in my head. And that was at a very young age. By the time I was 14 or 15, I was totally proficient and pretty much I don't believe anybody's an expert in anything, because I believe life is always a never-ending process of learning. But by the time I was 13 or 14, I was totally proficient, and I was doing public psychic fairs. I was one of the youngest psychics ever to do psychic fairs in the Midwest. And on weekends, I would sit at psychic fairs. My mother would sit there with me, and she'd go see other psychics and talk to them while I sat at my table and did readings all day.
Well, you were very, very popular. You had success there. During that time, did you have a false sense of happiness, or did you think something was kind of off, even though things were going well?
There was something off. There was always something off. I'll give you an example. I would never be able, although I could do and perform these things, and no matter how much money I was making doing this, I was only charging, I started it back then at $10 a reading. And by the time I got out of the psychic fairs and quit doing them at the store, I was only at 20 or 25 a reading, because these other psychics would tell me, oh, you're going to lose your gift if you charge too much. You have a God-given gift. Well, I had a God-given gift, but it was being tainted by the devil for those purposes. So they were right to a certain extent. It's a God-given gift, but it wasn't being used that way. It was being used as it was tainted. And, my money, my finances would always be off. One time I was doing a public seance, and one night, the old medium that they had doing these things didn't want to do them anymore. And the promoter was really in a bad spot. So she asked me, she said, I heard you're a medium. Would you mind doing one of these? I said, no, absolutely not. So I go into a room. It was always like a hotel boardroom, because the psychic fairs were always at hotels in their boardrooms and conference rooms where everybody would set up. I go in there and I sat down, and I was already into mediumship and spirit channeling. This was probably when I was 19 or 20. And I had my spirit guide named Haji. And I would bring the spirit guide in, and he was supposed to let me know and keep bad spirits out and all this. But what I would do would be I would start rattling off information, people's names, and the spirit would say, for instance, Ann, are you here? And this is without knowing any of these people. And 3 people might stand up named Ann. Okay, here's some more information. You had a grandmother by the name of this. Then the other 2 would sit down. There'd be one person there, and then he'd deliver the message. There was one time when the whole room was full of just people that they were bad and nasty people. everybody they wanted to talk to, instead of common questions and telling their relatives that they love them or whatever message they wanted to give. These people were like, oh, you owe me $200 a long time ago. You did this to me. You did that to me. And my spirit got, and I didn't stop. I just kept going on, and my hand was picked up, and there were some candles, and I made the stupid mistake of taking modeling clay because we were out of candle holders, and I couldn't find any, and I stuck these candles in a bowl and put modeling clay around them. Oh, and also candles during one of these things would burn completely down. You might have a regular candle that's about 8 inches tall, and by the time this thing was over, it'd be gone. That's the type of energy it would suck into the air from the candle. But anyway, it took my hand and it threw it into this candle. And my hand stayed there. Didn't move. Finally, when I was brought out of trance, I was like, ow. And I looked at my hand, and I actually had to go to the emergency room for the burn. I don't have any scars or anything. Well, I do have a little scar there. But then people, they were all like, oh, I guess this guy's for real, because he sat there and we all saw this. And they all wanted readings with me afterwards. I'm like, no, I'm going to the emergency room. My hand hurts, all right?
So you had your hand in the flame and you're in a trance.
My hand was in the flame, and it was in, as this candle melted down, of course, it hit the modeling clay in the bowl, and my hand was in this flame and whatever else was there.
So basically you were being hijacked by Satan to
Of course.
Yeah. So that's, of course. I remember. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I remember too, you mentioning that around this time you would actually in your home, you would hear certain things, or there were some entities that were in your house. Did you ever engage any of these, or when you were in it, what did you think that was, or what was going on there?
Well, when you're involved in the cult, you look at these things as, oh, cool, that's my spirit guide. Like, for instance, there would be raps on the wall, spiritualism. One of the reasons it started was the Fox sisters way back in the 1800s. That was the start of spiritualism, and they were able to communicate with somebody according to knocks and raps on the wall. So I would hear raps on the wall. Sometimes things would go missing and be moved to a different spot. I'd have cold spells. I'd have this. I'd have that. And whenever you're involved in this stuff, it's like, oh, cool, there's a spirit here. That's great. Where towards the end of it, everything turned evil. I just wanted this stuff gone. And that's what the Catholic Church Roman Catholic Church helped me do, was when I turned Catholic, I also went for deliverance. I believe I'm also a deliverance minister as well. I prefer to use a priest because a priest has something I don't have, which is apostolic succession. So the deliverance works a lot better with a priest than it does me, and it's faster, and there's not as many problems, if there are any problems that come up. But me being the deliverance minister, there's lots of things that, and this was, of course, afterwards, and I believe that by me being a deliverance minister, I believe everything. I'm working on my second book, by the way, but it's about leading a good prayer life. It's about the prayers that help me drive out evil, and it's also on deliverance, where when some people pray with you over deliverance, there are some people in church may pray over you for your problems or your healing, regardless with that healing's physical, spiritual, or emotional. There's still a sense of negative emotion that lays there, such as anger, such as fear. There's still little pieces of that don't go away. So basically, the key to a good deliverance session is not only you pray and you have the person renounce the negative emotion first before you have them announcing the real problem. This works especially good in the occult because demons and the demonic are attached to negative emotion. That's how come I'm considered pretty much, I don't like to use the word expert again, but for curses and the breaking of curses. For instance, with an occult curse, an occult curse is usually about 70% psychological and has a scientific explanation, and 30% preternatural. So this person wanting to curse you may invoke demons and send them to you, but then they start a campaign of harassment. They'll send you threatening emails. They'll send you threatening mail. They'll file false police reports against you. They'll slander you. They'll file frivolous lawsuits. They'll leave stuff on your porch or on your car windshield. They will do anything they can to spark fear and anger into you. And the reason they do that is because the demons that they sent, they feed off those negative emotions. So the more negative emotion that they produce by harassing you, the tighter the demon's hold on their victim is, and also the more mental anguish they cause the victim as well. One of the keys to breaking any of these type of curses where victims are getting harassed is you have to tell the victim, this is a head game for 70 or 80% of this. Yeah, you may be having preternatural events, but these people want you scared and angry. Here's how this works. Okay. The best thing you can do is tell, whenever they send you a hateful email or a threatening email, you tell them Christ is your Lord and Savior, the Blessed Mother's around, and the whole communion of angels and saints, and the Father Almighty. Sorry you feel that way, but my heart belongs to these people, and that's it. Thank you. I'll be praying for you. And I always have them type the same response. So eventually it just wears them out. You know, they'll send another threatening message and they get the same response time after time. So eventually they think, oh, well, that's it. And then there's only a matter of getting rid of the demons that are in there. And that's up to a priest or a deliverance minister, depending on who you use. Usually by the time the negative emotion's gone, the signs of the demons are very weak, unless they're really supercharged or something like that. And this has been going on for a long time. What you're left with is usually a house blessing, usually takes care of it. It doesn't have to go into anything else, but there are times when it does. But I'm rambling on. I'm sorry.
No. It's all very interesting. I just wondered if because I know that we've talked before about some of those things that happen, and they come from somewhere. You're like, a threatening email, what are some of the things that happened to you during that time? Did you find yourself being in a state of anger and just aggravation, some of those things happening to you?
Oh, definitely. The end of this was there was a Polero, which is a Payomiombe priest. I was still operating the store. Like I said, towards the end, my wife had kind of backed up. I hired a manager and she told me her beliefs were Buddhist. So I thought, fine. Because I didn't really, I wanted people, although I was doing things connected with the dark arts, because people in the occult will tell you there's good and there's bad, but it's really a lie. Magic is magic because you're still you're trying to cause coincidence to occur in conformity at will with a magical ritual. So, there is no such thing as light and dark, but I would hire these people with, which just had light spiritual beliefs and that, because you don't want to because you have people of all faiths coming in. Yes, I had dark magic practitioners and Satanists and witches and Santeria and Payo and all these people coming in, but you don't want somebody like that behind the counter because it'll scare off all the people who are into the so-called white magic. So I hired this gal. Well, she was connected with this Polero, which was a Payomiombe priest. And these people, I was an easy mark. Payomiombe, these people are nasty. The magical practice they have is nasty. It includes a lot of death and destruction. Some very, very powerful demons they invoke through their rituals. Just to make a long story short, it's pretty nasty stuff. It's probably the worst occult practice I think there is, even worse than Satanism.
What kind of things would they do? I mean, is it just a matter of sacrifice? What kind of?
Yeah, they're into animal sacrifices, and they don't announce this because PETA and a lot of the animal rights organizations are always hunting them down, because what they do to the poor animals is, with this guy, it was all chickens. He told, and if he couldn't get a chicken, he's sick. He'd go to the pet store and get a poor little guinea pig. Or he'd go down, we had a farmer's market called Sewer Market. You could get farm animals down there. Farmers would come in from everywhere selling their produce. You could get goats. You could get other animals. Well, what they do is they torture these poor animals to get the animals worked up before they sacrifice them, and their adrenaline, because it believes the sacrifice will be more powerful. So they torture and beat on these poor animals and everything. These people even think they can torture demons to bid them to do their dirty work. Of course, they're stupid. The demon's just playing along with it, and he comes back with a vengeance. Anyway,
when all this was going on, did your family or friends, did they ever come to you and say, "Hey, Rob, what's going on? Are you okay?" Or did you not share a lot of that with them?
Oh, they knew what was going on, but I was a mark. The woman I hired was connected with this Polaro, and he needed a store to work out of. He was wanting to take over my store, so he asked me to join his sect. And I told him I'm not interested in joining your sect. I don't want, I don't know what this is about, but I don't want to be involved in animal sacrifice and all this kind of stuff. Although I'm an occult practitioner, Well, he turned against me and he cursed me. And it was a very strong curse. They used all kinds of harassment campaigns. There was a cop that was in the same sect that was one of his members. He harassed me. He come into the shop like he was doing a shakedown, and he would harass me and feed my head full of all this garbage. Like, oh, we know, we've been told you're dealing drugs. I don't touch drugs. I smoked pot back in high school, and I couldn't feel my feet, and I never went back. But anyway, one thing led to another, and I started losing my mental faculties. I went into a deep depression. When I go to sleep, I have night terrors and nightmares. I'd start to see shadow people. I hear raps or scratches on the wall, all these things. And I would tell my wife about it. And she would say, I'm worried about you. We need to get you to a doctor. So I went out the emergency room, and they gave me some sleep medicine to where I could rest, but it didn't work. And they took me up with a psychiatrist, and I went and I saw a psychiatrist. And of course he said, we're going to give you some more medicine. And I'd take the medicine and it wouldn't work. And the problem just kept getting worse and more intense. I would sob. I started to have suicidal tendencies. I wasn't angry, but I thought about doing stupid stuff like walking up and just gently slapping someone I didn't know. And the bad thing was at one time, I would black out like I was in a room. I'd black out, and then I'd come out of it, and I'd be sitting on a bed in a different room with no idea of how I got there. Of course, medical science was like, we don't really believe in the preternatural, the supernatural, have some more medicine. None of the medicine worked. So one night I hit rock bottom. I had a 22 caliber pistol, and this is what I don't say. My wife was getting ready to divorce me because she thought I was going crazy. My son, this wasn't helping him any at all because he was afraid. He was like 7 or 8 years old, I think, that time. And I was going to kill myself. I put a 22 caliber bullet in. It was a little revolver, and I was sitting there sobbing, trying to get my thoughts together and all. And the doorbell rang. And my wife said, Rob, come out here. Lorelei's here. Well, Lorelei was a friend of ours that was extremely Catholic. And she used to work for Father Rookie in his office in Chicago. Father Rookie is called International Compassion Ministries. And he had an office where he worked his ministry out of in Chicago. And she came in. I came out there. She said, so I hear you're having problems. I said, yeah. She said, I brought some oil, Father Rookie blessed. It's a blessed holy oil. Hold out your hands. So I held out my hands, and she made the shape of a crucifix in each of my hands, and she also anointed my forehead in the shape of a crucifix. And she said a special prayer. She said, now go back there and lay down, try to get some rest. I'll be back tomorrow. What do you have connected with these people? And there were some objects in my garage that we had connected with these people still, because for whatever reason, I developed some sort of weird attachment to this stuff. And her husband was with her. He said, we're getting rid of this stuff right now. So they went out to my garage, picked up all this stuff and dumped it, disposed of it.
What kind of stuff was it? Just stuff that had come from the bookstore or things they had given you?
Nah, this is stuff this sector given me. Like they give me certain magical items. They tell me, well, Rob, your business stinks today. We're going to do a magical ritual. Here, repeat this ritual. And, I was busy. I didn't stop and think of it. And the strongest thing they did was they would bound me. They had like this big, it's called a Naganga pot, where the demons live when they conjure and invoke demons. The demons live in this pot. It was a Naganga pot they gave me. And they were saying, oh, these people are after you. These other people from this other occult bookstore, they want to put you out of business. And then they would do things or work behind my back to show, see there's a weird symbol on the parking lot. And, I eventually started believing these people because what they were doing was they were going to all the other occult bookstores and spreading nasty rumors about me, and the people were all mad at me, and these were people we used to see customers back and forth. So I believed them. I believed, actually, other than there being the rational explanation, they're stirring the pot, literally with the Naganga pot. But then they said, here, you say this prayer, you and your mother say this prayer, and it'll all get better. So I went over to the Naganga pot and said the prayer. Well, I found out later that was actually a binding prayer that bound me and my mother to the demons in that pot. And since he was the Polero, he was controlling the demons. I found that out because I called a Santero. It was also involved in, we also know a lot of Poleros in Florida when this was going on after I got out of this and started investigating stuff. Well, during the context of slowly everything falling apart. And so we were bound to this thing. And then I started, I'm going to fix you. I went to the church and got some holy water, and I started pouring holy water into this pot. And I had also a little cross. It was a wooden cross, and I doused it with holy water and stuck it under the dirt. And I do this several times. There was only like a period of 4 days before, during the period I was headed, before I hit rock bottom. This guy would call me like within 10 minutes. Is someone messing with the pot? He would know I was doing this. There's nobody in the store, nobody around, by myself. And that's what I was doing. He would know that demon was letting him know someone was messing with the pot. So they got rid of the pot. I got a good night's sleep. I hadn't slept for like 4 days. Finally, I still kept taking medicine, but the medicine wouldn't work. So the next day, Lorelei came back and she said, we're calling Father Rookie. She called Father Rookie, and I talked to Father for probably a good hour and a half to 2 hours. He prayed with me over the phone, and he told me to go to a Catholic supply store, which we had all around St. Louis, and pick up a St. Michael chaplet. And for people who don't know, it's a special prayer for all 9 choirs of angels by the intercession of St. Michael, and then all the archangels, as well as all the angels and your guardian angels. It's a special set of prayers. And one of the graces of doing this is if you do this, I do it earlier in the day before I go to communion, you get an angel from each of the 9 choirs that accompanies you to communion. That's one of the good graces. But I started doing it because the medicine wasn't working. I've been taking this stuff probably for a week and a half, 2 weeks. None of it was working. And they just kept changing stuff. Finally, I started saying the St. Michael chaplet, and I started getting better. Started feeling a lot better. Started eating away at this stuff. And then I figured, well, is this the medicine just getting into my system, or is this the chaplet? So I stopped the chaplet for a while and still took the medicine for a couple of days, and then I started feeling bad again. So I knew it was a chaplet. So then I went back to the chaplet and just quit taking all the medicine. Eventually, I got to a point where Father Rookie told me, now I'm going to introduce you to the rosary. And we had gotten a Servite rosary, which is the Sorrowful Mother's rosary. from him. He was a Servite priest. So this is mainly, he said the regular rosary as well, but this is one of the main rosaries we got from him that he said all the time. Start feeling even better. But yet there was some things left. There was a little bit of depression. There was little stuff here and there. My wife said, read the flyer from church, her church, which is our church eventually. And there was a person going to Lourdes, France on a pilgrimage, and she was asking if there's anyone that wants to take a prayer request. She will set it on the altar at Lourdes, France. So my wife said, make out a petition, write down, do you want this stuff gone? All this mental stuff that's causing you, all this preternatural events that's causing you, and get rid of the rest of it. She said, well, it's not going to hurt anything, and send it over there. Well, I did that, she gave it to the woman, or I gave it to her, I don't remember which. About a week and a half or 2 weeks later, I had a wonderful dream about Jesus and the Blessed Mother, and they were looking at me, smiling at me. And that made me feel really warm, and it was like pure love. And I was like, and everything was gone. I didn't feel bad at all. And I found out later from the lady that took the prayer request of Lourdes that was approximately the exact time that she placed my petition on the altar at Lourdes.
Wow.
So Our Lady of Lourdes broke the rest of it.
And tell people that may not know what the significance of Lourdes is.
Well, Lourdes, France is there was apparitions of the Blessed Mother to a particular poor young girl named Bernadette. And eventually the Blessed Mother during these apparitions, of course, some people, of course, didn't believe her at first, and then they believed more and more people started showing up for the apparitions. And eventually, during one of those apparitions, the Blessed Mother asked Bernadette to stick her hand. It was by a grotto. It was like a grotto where the apparitions were taking place. It was like a rock, like a little grotto. And Blessed Mother asked Saint Bernadette to dig with her hands at this particular spot. And when Saint Bernadette did, a natural spring developed. And the Blessed Mother told her these waters are healing. And people started using the water. They started blessing themselves with it, drinking it, washing with it, doing whatever they could. And there were lots of healings that had taken place. So now, Lourdes, there's probably, I want to say, thousands of miracles of healings that have taken place. And it's a big pilgrimage site for Catholics. And
you knew around that time, there's the exact time or close to the time where they were there and placed it, because that's when you started to feel.
Yeah, one priest that, I still wanted to be a deliverance. I wanted to help people get out of this stuff. Or I wanted to pay back in some method because I was grateful for having my life back.
Tell us about. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, tell us about the characteristics of demons. They do hate us as a human race because they feel like, why should we have the favor of God? Why should we be? And so talk about what they do to manipulate and cause havoc. They have a pretty set standard of things they do, right?
Oh yeah. They brew negative emotion. That's one of the big things they do. Anger, fear. If you get enough negative emotion, eventually you're going to start seeing some forms of mental illness, such as depression, other things that you may have depression, but the negative emotion these things can produce will make your own situation a lot worse. They can also make physical illness a lot worse than it actually is. They will do they will turn your whole life upside down, especially in the occult. The occult is Satan and the demon's domain. If you're involved in this stuff, he'll stray you along. You may think he's rewarding you or letting little things happen to your benefit that help you. But eventually, he's going to come after you, and he's going to sit sick of messing with you, and then that's the end of it. They can do all kinds of things. They can ruin your finances. They can ruin your home. In one case, I know someone who was Catholic, who had a Catholic altar in her room. It was a man and a wife that were doing deliverance ministry, And they came home one day, and her altar cloth was charred. There was a fire on her altar cloth, nowhere else in the house. Well, it was like it was trying to burn down their altar. Only the highest ranking or demons up the hierarchy can manipulate religious objects. They can do it. They can destroy. Like I said, it must destroy my life. You know, they can ruin your finances. They love to cause fighting and strife, because whenever there's a home that's demonically infested, the family will all be fighting amongst themselves. You know, the kids and the parents, the two parents together, the siblings, they all just trying to turn everyone against each other. Basically they make chaos, strife, problems. And the longer it stays there, the worse your situation gets.
I remember the story, and I thought it goes along with what you're saying, talking about chaos. And I remember a few points of it. Didn't you, early on, was there a spell that you tried to do to find love, and then that caused major chaos with you and your wife, right? Later on.
Yeah. I was dumb. I was a young guy. I was naive. Met this woman that was older than me, about 4 or 5 years older. She had one kid already, and I got involved with her, and I thought I loved her. Well, she dumped me, and I was really hurt, and I thought, you know, as most young people do, oh, this is the one. Of course, I should have listened to my mother, because my mother was telling me the whole time, this is a blessing in disguise. Be thankful this happened. So therefore, always listen to your mother and father. But anyway, so I did a love ritual. I took a red poppet, which is like a voodoo doll. I had a picture of her. I glued her face to the voodoo doll, used certain herbs and oils and things, and repeated a ritual for like 7 days. On the 8th day, she called me, wanted me back. But by the 7th day, I didn't really want her back. So I decided this really wasn't love, and I'm not interested. So she chased me all over the place. Turns out she ended up pregnant. Okay. And at the same time, years ago, I used to do security work for the government. I was like a private subcontractor for a bunch of security companies that did work like for federal labor strikes and military bases and that kind of stuff. And they ran an article in the paper on me because a lot of the stuff I was doing was executive protection. I attended a certain training course, and I graduated really well with a lot of good numbers and stuff. So they put me right to work, and I was executive protections bodyguard work. These companies will get State Department contracts for foreign dignitaries that the Secret Service didn't cover, other stuff like that. And the local paper, because this was a small town I was from, ran a newspaper article on me. Well, she saw that paper, then all of a sudden I was the father of her kid. Baby was born, you know. She said I was the father of her kid. Went and took a DNA test, came back inconclusive. Okay. So her big thing was to abuse the welfare system. So what her friend told her, you can make all this money on welfare and you don't have to work. And at that time, you know, offices between these places for public aid weren't hooked together, and neither was the prosecutor's office. These offices weren't hooked together by computers. You know, so she'd move to a new county and apply for welfare again. And of course, she'd have to name someone, because they ask you, who's the father of your child? And she didn't know who the real father was, but she would say me, because she knew I made good money, and I didn't want nothing to do with her, because she was hoping to get a bunch of money on child support from me. So she'd move to a new county. I'd get another subpoena from the court to go take a blood test. This time came back negative, not the father. This went on and on through about 5 or 6 counties for a number of years. Finally, the last blood test I took, I said, people have to do something. I had all copies of all these blood tests. I tell you, I said, she's just reaming you. This is the total waste of your time and effort because I'm not the father of this. They said, yeah, we know that. So she had my name even put on the birth certificate. So the prosecuting attorney told her, he said, look, this man's not the father of your child. You need to remove his name from that birth certificate or we're going to prosecute you. This is fraud. So eventually she had my name removed and that was the end of it. But she made my life miserable. And, so the motto of this is, if you're doing an occult ritual, be careful what you wish for.
And for people who may say, oh, that was just a coincidence. You hadn't spoken to her or seen her. She didn't want to date you anymore. You did the ritual to try to get her back. And then she showed back up in your life. Yeah,
she showed back and wanted to date me, but when she showed back up after the ritual, I still did the ritual, and then about towards the end of the ritual, I'm like, why am I doing this? But you never stop a ritual in mid-thing because it can cause all kinds of problems. So I just went ahead and finished the ritual, and she called and wanted to get back together with me, and I wasn't interested. I'd already listened to my mother, and I think she was right, And then came this big pregnancy thing, And I didn't even talk to her for years. She would just use me, say I was a father of her kid, because she had to name someone at the welfare office. She had to name the father of her child. And, and the timing with this was totally absurd. There's no way.
And so demons will give you what you are asking for at first, but then comes back to bite you in the end. They will destroy.
Yeah, well, everything's tainted with a demon, or Satan. For instance, you may need some rent money. You might have trouble paying your rent, and say your rent's $1,000 a month. So you do a money drawing ritual. There's a few coincidences that may persuade things to go your way, and you'll get your $1,000 a month. But then shortly thereafter, everything falls apart. Then you're in worse financial problems. That month, you're going to need about $3,000 or $4,000 for problems that have arisen and everything else. And the devil and Satan are causing these problems, causing you to do more and more magical rituals. The more magical rituals you do, the tighter bond you have with them. So they're stringing you along, they're baiting you and trying to trap you.
Exactly. And I think that one of the things people are attracted to the occult, they feel like they can get what they want. They can get gains in life because if they go, it's a shortcut. What would be your warning after have suffered and gone through this for people who may say, you know what, I'm gonna dabble in that. I'm gonna try. What would be your warning to somebody?
Don't do it. I mean, it's a drug. You'll get, especially on the black, like whenever you curse someone or any of these things, or you invoke a demon, it puts you on a power trip. And you develop this really nasty sense of, well, I can do anything I want. No one can stop me. And you're ignorant to people and you're nasty to people. And there's a lot of things that go with that. Your life's going to fall apart. It may appear to you that you get what you want, but everything's going to fall apart in the end. I never met a happy occult practitioner in my life. There's always problems there, and once one problem's resolved, there's 20 more, because these are the people. I used to take their money for selling candles and incense and all the ritual components and all this other stuff and books on rituals. Once one problem's resolved, or it appears to be somewhat on the path to being resolved, here's 5 or 10 more that show up that the devil and the demons caused to get you to keep doing these rituals. It's like a drug. You get on a power trip if you're messing with the dark arts or you're cursing someone as well. And if you're just on, it's the rest of it's like a drug, whether it's love, money, whatever ritual you did to get these things. It's like a drug. You're going to want, you'll get a little taste of it, and then you want to go back for more. Then you get a little taste of it again, and then you want to do more. And it just goes on and on and on as you move from one thing into another. Like somebody who's messing with spiritualism. I get a lot of emails about people who have, about teenagers who've used Ouija boards. Trying to communicate with relatives that are gone. One poor little girl was 13 years old, and she lost her brother at a young age to a car accident. I believe it was a car accident. Man, I think it was something else. Anyway, she made the mistake of asking the Ouija board when she was going to die. And the Ouija board gave her a date that was about 2 or 3 months away, maybe 4 or 5 months. And she believed it. She was scared. She was worried. She went into a deep depression. This poor kid was suicidal because of all this anxiety that built up. She actually thought she was going to die on this date. And I met her parents. I said, well, I'm in for a shock. I'm going to tell you exactly, you're not going to die on a specific date. Well, why not? And I gave her the real brief theology lesson. What you're talking to on that board isn't your brother. It's a demon pretending to your brother. Number 2, demons don't have the ability to forecast the future or future events. They like to make you believe they do because they can observe your surroundings and make estimated guesses based on their observations. But they don't. God, the Lord, is the only one that's going to know when your time is up. So I went through everything with her. I gave her all these reasons why what she was messing with was wrong. And I told the family to destroy the board. A priest came and blessed their house, and they never had another problem. But there are people that was a fortunate case. There are people who will continue to use the Ouija board, and they will actually get raps and stuff on the wall, but it's not a deceased relative. It's a demon making them think it's a deceased relative or a person they wanted to communicate with, like channelers do, like trance channels or mediums. Those aren't relatives. Those are demons pretending to be your relatives. And since they observe your surroundings, they know about people's past. In other words, when somebody would sit down to me for a psychic reading, those demons from observing that person those demons were all around me, and they would, from being around that person for a little bit, they were able to observe that person and pick up on things in their past that I would use. And in the psychic world, we call that as the proof. Whenever you're able to, when somebody sits down in front of you and you're able to blow their mind by telling them the name of all their deceased relatives, the color of car they drive, the profession they're in, as well as their first, last, and middle name, they're a believer. But it's actually the demons feeding you this information. Yeah, go ahead.
They get you at that point. How do you protect yourself from evil today? Does Satan ever try to get in there and tempt you now again? Do you ever have those?
Life, we're all sinners. Life's constant temptation. I stay on a good track. I don't get too involved in movies or books on this stuff. I know pretty much all I need to know about it. I tend to read spiritual books, particularly like on Padre Pio, Catholic saints, Saint Therese, things like that. That keeps me, especially Padre Pio, that keeps me pretty well focused. And the devil will, I'll be in a bookstore and I'll see a book and I'll be like, I need to really read that just so I'm able to have this knowledge in case I run into something. And then I'll kind of pick it up and thumb through it, and I'll say, no, bad idea. And it's like something which was probably an angel or a holy angel or something. I'll know that information. Like I was on a book about Santa Muerte, which for those of you who don't know, Santa Muerte is like a Mexican folk saying. It looks like the Grim Reaper holding a globe and a sickle. They're really popular with Hispanic people. They're really popular with Santeria and Pio practitioners, narco traffickers, prostitutes. They pray to this. What it is it's a bastardization of the Blessed Mother. It's believed that Santa Muerte, they found a new way, or the devil found a new way to bastardize our Blessed Mother, because the devil hates our Blessed Mother. She crushes his head. That's why the rosary is so effective against this stuff. But, so they'll pray to the Santa Muerte. I was thumbing through, and it was a book on Santa Muerte, and I thumbed through it, and something just told me, put it down. You don't need this. you can find what you need when the time comes on the internet. Mm-hmm. So I just set the book down. I listened to my instinct, or if that was my guardian angel, a saint giving me whatever that was telling me, it was for my own good, and I put it down. I pray. I stay approximately 1 hour or more in prayer every day. If my time doesn't allow for that, and I'm working, I will make sure I at least say my rosary once a day, and I count it off on my fingers, So I make sure that I'm instilled in some form of prayer. You should always have good prayer medals. The St. Benedict medal, especially, that chases away any evil. Make sure that there's the St. Benedict blessing of the medal is done instead of a priest just blessing a medal for you like they usually do. That's good. But there is a special blessing for the St. Benedict medal that's usually done by a Benedictine monk or priest. I keep a little supply of those around for people who need them. I keep holy water. I keep, it stays away from me. As much prayer as I do, and I go to church, I take communion regularly, go to confession regularly, it stays away from me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't like me anymore. It's moved on to other people.
It didn't work for you. So I think people do you ever get frustrated with people who don't, I'll say believe, but don't believe that there is evil out there and that demons are active in our world? And what do you say to people who you run into maybe that just don't believe that these forces are real?
Well, I believe it was Pope John Paul II said, if you don't believe in the devil, you can't believe in the Bible. If you believe in Jesus and you believe the Bible, it's all in Scripture. It's in there. With Jesus tempting, read a book on Padre Pio or Gemma Bogani, who are two Catholic saints that were tormented by the devil, attacked by the devil on a constant basis for their holiness. That's the problem today. I meet every time I'm out, I meet more and more people that don't seem to be involved in the occult, but they're atheists. They don't believe in anything anymore. This generation, with all of its technology and everything, people just are having a hard time believing that. That's why I tell them this stuff is real. The devil is real. But so is Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. So is His Blessed Mother. So is all these saints that help us. So is St. Michael the Archangel. So is all the archangels and the whole 9 choirs of holy angels. These are just as real as me and you. Stay on the right track, and I hope you never have a problem. The problem with a lot of the atheism, Satanism is part of Satanism even is an atheistic religion. There's two types of Satanists. There's an atheistic Satanist and a theological Satanist. The atheistic or LaVeyan Satanist follows Anton LaVey's the Satanic Bible. And although it does delve into the occult, it basically is an atheist religion that says God is real, the devil isn't real, party it up, sin all you want. Because when you die, you're going to lay in a box and rot. A theological Satanist like Michael Aquino in the Temple of Set, these are people who actually believe and worship Satan as a deity. It's easy if you're an atheist to get trapped up in this because, the devil's just going to lead you along, Eventually people hit something in their life. Addiction is also a form. Addiction will cause lots of problems with demons. Alcoholism, drugs, even victims of abuse, they'll have all these negative emotions. Demons will attach themselves. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, anything that makes you angry, fear, anything. Those are two of the biggest negative emotions that most people face when they experience this stuff. Yeah, you gotta. If you want to try not believing in the Lord or God or any of these things, or if you want to try, believing in Satan, thinking he's going to try God, try the Blessed Mother, try these things like Padre Pio and Gemma Gugani that want to intercede for us. Padre Pio said during his lifetime, he'll do more work in heaven than he will when he was on earth. And he had a lot on earth. St. Michael, the holy angels. If you believe in the occult, you believe in demons, which are fallen angels. Therefore, you know about the holy angels. And the holy angels sent all the demons to hell. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of demons, billions and billions or trillions of demons, but there's more holy angels than there are demons. That's the good news.
That's the good news. Rob, my friend, thank you so much. It's very,
no problem.
Very enlightening and interesting. I'm so glad that you're on the other side of that, and thank you for kind of being a cautionary tale, hopefully, to people out there.
It's a waste of your time in your life.
Yeah,
you may find it fun and interesting, but it's a waste of time.
In the end, it's not going to work
come out of it.
All right, thank you so much.
No problem. Take care.
Happiness Sold Separately is created and hosted by Jason Hensley and is produced by Makash Films. Music by Soundstripe. Narration by Lauren Gobis. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs immediate help, call the National Mental Health Hotline at 866-903-3787. We would be honored if you would rate, share, and subscribe. From the entire Happiness Sold Separately team, thank you for listening.